Mad Max Fury Road is a brilliant action movie, and hands down the best thing about it isn't the insane vehicles or the colors or even that guitar guy, it's the dialogue. Because yeah, sure, the visuals are incredible, but if I ask you to name 5 action movies with great visuals, you could probably do it. What sets Fury Road apart is that the dialogue is used in a way that is borderline genius, which at first might sound ridiculous because the movie barely lets anyone talk. The whole premise is basically a woman steals the dictator's wives and tries to drive away in a giant truck while a small army of Nosferatu extras in chrome lipstick is chasing them through the desert. It's chaos. Or at least it pretends to be, but we will talk about that later. And yet by the end we know and understand our characters on a surprisingly deep level. And that's crazy because the movie makes it about as hard as possible. It takes place in a dystopian wasteland, a kind of setting that usually requires an endless exposition just to make sense. Add to the fact that the whole thing unfolds over just a few days, and most of the time they're just trying to survive. And as a cherry on top, both Max and Furiosa are not exactly chatty characters. Like, they aren't gonna sit down and share their life stories unless they absolutely have to.
What's your name? What do I call you?
Does it matter?
So that leaves screenwriters and editors with a seemingly impossible task. And somehow, Fury Road nails it like it's nothing. It's extremely entertaining but also digs into complicated ideas without ever screaming the moral of the film in your face. Which leaves us with a big question. How does a 2-hour action movie tell a story almost without words? So if your character barely speaks, you have options. For example, you can use a voiceover that explains the exposition.
There must be a con like me in every prison in America. I'm the guy who can get it for you.
Or characters' thoughts.
I had never lived in a world where adults didn't trust me, where they were always yelling at me.
In this case, the narrative almost feels like a book or a diary, which is not a bad thing, but if you have any idea what Mad Max is about, you know that it's built around this sort of thing. Another technique is to give a taciturn character a very talkative friend.
Man, you almost burned the hair out my nose, just like the time. And then I ate some rotten berries. Man, I had some strong gases eking out of my butt that day.
Or to put a character in a position where they constantly need to explain things out loud.
Quite a bit of mud caked on the soils. Analysis shows it's from Sussex with London mud overlaying it. How do you know? Holland. Clear as a map reference to me. South of the river, too. So, the kid who owned these trainers came to London from Sussex 20 years ago and left them behind. So what happened to him? Something bad.
And there is no better way to explain why dialogue in Mad Max is genius than through the movie called Tenet. You see, watching Nolan's Tenet is like buying an iPhone that can't make calls. It looks cool, shoots videos straight to IMAX and has an AI translation across 20 languages. But instead of just letting you call your mom, it explains its plot in Spanish, Japanese and Mandarin at the same time, but backwards. In other words, Tenet is what would have happened to Fury Road if George Miller had caved to the urge to spell everything out. It uses what for this video we will call the Holmes-Watson method, when one character has information but doesn't want to share it, while the other wants to know and keeps asking questions. In Tenet, though, every character is forced to be both Holmes and Watson at the same time, constantly asking and constantly explaining. And that's why we get so many scenes like this.
Roger has assets in the Oslo Freeport. I'm guessing it's there.
And this way to the vaults.
Guessing.
It's ought to be abandoned.
Abandoned. If you were now to make an arrangement.
Arrangement at the airport.
The airport. It's child's play, really. Child's play.
Well, actually, the gold bars might get some play.
Gold bars.
Cities will turnstile in that vault.
Turnstile. So sit tight.
Sit tight.
You done your part. My part.
And the most ironic thing about it is that despite all this talking, the characters remain as deep as wax figures because there is no time left for their growth. Like Mad Max, Tenet is built more for action than drama. But unlike Mad Max, it cannot resist explaining everything about its world. By the way, only after I rewatched the two movies again, I realized how surprisingly similar they are on a dramatic level. In both films, the protagonist establishes a friendship with a woman who is close to the villain, and the villain's cruelty is shown through his cruelty to the woman, and in both cases there are sons. Huh. Interesting. But let's look at how the spoken exposition is done in Fury Road. Aside from the voice in Max's head, the most exposition is done through visuals and the character's actions. From the classic verbal exposition, we have Max's dialogue, where he is basically having the situation explained to him. But how is this?
Sled! What's going on? Sled!
Treason! Betrayal! An imperator gone rogue!
An imperator? Who? Furiosa. She took a lot of stuff from Immortan Joe. What stuff? Breeders. He's prized breeders. He wants them back. Got a hand laid on them.
Different from this.
We think it's a type of inverse radiation triggered by nuclear fission.
You didn't make it.
We don't know how yet.
First, the dialogue is placed right in the middle of action, and the two characters are not just standing there in front of each other to deliver the exposition. Second, and more important, it also serves as a basis for the character's introduction. From this conversation, we see that Nux is a fanatic who is willing to die for Immortan Joe. And from this short dialogue exposition, we learn not only what happened, but also how Joe's propaganda work and how brainwashed Nux is. But then when we get to Furiosa and Max, the verbal exposition is cut down to almost nothing. We literally need the fingers on one hand to count how many conversations they have had. But if they do happen, it's only when the characters already trust each other. And trust between characters is built through action. Let's look at one scene and you'll get what I'm talking about. Here Furiosa and the wives have just escaped from a chase, and Max has threatened them into taking him along. But a fanatic Nux sneaks into the truck. Furiosa obviously wants to kill him, but the girls persuade her not to, because they're good characters or something like that. Max comes back and quickly assesses the situation. But from here tension begins to rise very quickly because Nux and the girls argue, but it doesn't feel unnatural. Firstly, because we already know how much he believes in the propaganda of Immortan Joe, and secondly, because the whole scene had been accelerating and building up tension for this moment. So getting back to how trust is built. While the girls argue with Nux, look at how Max listens attentively. At this moment, he realizes that they are on the same side.
No, I am awaiting.
You're an old man battle fodder, killing everyone and everything!
We're not to blame.
And who killed the world?
And so when 5 minutes later Max and Furiosa start acting as a team, we're not surprised. We probably don't even think about it consciously. It just feels natural for these characters. And that's how we get a scene where Furiosa tells Max about the place where she was born, and ultimately that's how everybody learns Max's name. No long introductions, just character development brought to you by kidnapping and shared trauma. And here we have to talk about the editing of this film because it's such an integral part of the storytelling style that it's impossible to ignore. The lead editor of the project was Margaret Sixwell, and Miller wanted her on this project specifically because she had no experience editing action films, which meant she wasn't familiar with the editing cliches of the genre and could bring a fresh perspective. Sixwell was given more than 480 hours of footage with the task of cutting it down to 100 minutes. The final cut ended up being 120 minutes with more than 2,700 individual shots. And if this number means nothing to you, because why should it? The average number of shots in a movie is 1,045, with action films having about 1,913 shots. So now think about 2,700 shots again. Sixwell worked on it for almost 3 years, and just the process of watching the footage took her 3 months. Mad Max Fury Road, on average, has 22.5 cuts per minute. And despite the pace, which many would call mad, oh my god, I'm so funny, somehow we as viewers don't get confused. In fact, it's a perfect movie for a generation with an attention span of a goldfish. And of course, while a lot of it was achieved with brilliant editing, this would only be possible if the material itself was visually clear. And here I'm gonna tell you about one of the visual techniques that was used during the filming, and I'm warning you, once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. This technique is called crosshair framing. So if you follow the traditional rules of cinematography, you place your objects on one of these 4 points of the screen. It's called the rule of thirds, and it's widely used in all movies because it helps us to navigate the space we're in when we have to cut to someone else's point of view. But if the story requires a high speed of editing, our eyes wouldn't be able to process information that quickly, because we have to spend time looking for the main object of the shot. And time, in action movies, is the most precious resource, almost like water in the Mad Max universe. So what George Miller, the director, and John Seale, the cinematographer, did is they put the main object of each shot in the center of the frame. Every time we get to a new shot with new visual information, we know where in the frame it's gonna be. And it makes a crucial difference when our brain has to digest 2,700 shots in 2 hours. I'm sorry, I can't get over this number. But let's see how crosshair framing works in practice.
In the faster cutting that he's got, your eye won't have to shift on an anamorphic frame, won't have to shift to find the next subject when you've only got 1.8 seconds of time to do that. that theory of not having to move your eyes and being able to fast cut, and it just goes bang, 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 takes you into it. And that is basically the whole of the film.
And only because of the fact that practically the entire film was shot this way, Sixwell had a creative freedom to do whatever she needed with the material, including cutting as fast as possible. But the reason why I'm bringing this all up is to show how clear visual storytelling can replace the need for words and explanation. Because, as Sixwell put it, the most important thing was always staying with the characters and following their development. She said, "I was always mindful of keeping the story moving along and not being seduced by visually interesting footage. I didn't want this to be a string of spectacular stunts and lose emotional connection with our main characters. I scoured the material looking for shots of Max, Furiosa, Nux, the girls, to keep them all present and humanize the action. I would do max passes of the film where I would only pay attention to him. I did the same for Furiosa, etc. I hope that at this point you see that even though Mad Max might appear chaotic at first, in reality every moment was meticulously crafted to give a viewer new information every second. And since the visual storytelling and music do most of the work, it makes the dialogue even more meaningful. Every word spoken is deliberate and in its place." So, where does this all lead us? Okay, I swear this is the last time I talk about Tenet. I don't hate Nolan's movies, I truly don't. But Tenet is just so perfectly pretentious that I simply can't stop comparing it to Fury Road. I want to discuss one theme that isn't the most important in either film, but is baked into their structure. It's women in men's world. As you probably remember, Tenet talks about it a lot. Kat's entire storyline is built around an unequal marriage, abuse, emotional blackmail, and of course her obsession with protecting her son, which gave us this absolute gem of a dialogue.
Everyone and everything that's ever lived, destroyed instantly. Precise enough?
Including my son.
Screenwriting. And if somebody says, well, Tenet isn't about feminism, it doesn't have to say anything, fine. But then look at how Fury Road handles it. Take the seed scene. When Furiosa realizes their plan has failed and all of them decide to go back, one woman shows the seeds that she's been keeping all this time in hope of a better future. And look at what this does to the movie's rhythm. It slows the action, giving the characters and the audience a quiet moment of reflection. In a universe as rich as Mad Max, Miller could have used this time to dump lore or explain the world's history. Instead, he spends it on a simple visual metaphor with emotional weight. And I think it adds a poetic, almost philosophical note to the story. Just as seeds won't grow without water, a world with only women would die out. The point is clear, the only option is to fight for and improve the world we already have, not run from it. It's a pivotal moment after which Furiosa decides to go back and try to make this world better instead of clinging to the hope of building this utopian society somewhere else. You see that somehow, through a little dialogue and a lot of visual storytelling, Fury Road told a profound story whose moral is both timeless and very modern. The entire essay might be summarized in one sentence. Sometimes less is really more. And I'm not saying that Miller's approach is the only way to make an action film. Hell no. Imagine if all movies were like this. But I love seeing moments when somebody takes the classic show not tell rule and cranks it up to the max without losing the emotional connection to the characters. In a stream of endless blockbusters following the same template, this film serves as a reminder that there are an infinite number of ways to tell a story without overloading it with dialogue, or turning the entire film into a meaningless parade of stunts and explosions. And this creative balance is the exact reason why Mad Max Fury Road is even better than you thought.